Let me share my screen. Okay. Hey, yo, welcome to Multimodal Weekly. This is a webinar series hosted by 12 apps. We've been doing this for the 23rd week, straight week in a row. We've been meeting every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. And here are the topics that we tend to cover on a weekly basis. News research in multimodal AI foundation models, innovative application of multimodal in different verticals. Sometimes we have community members who want to share their projects related to video in multimodal that they like to share. And sometimes we have members from our team give tutorials and guides on how to use our platform and API. In previous session, we have a wide range of speakers from startup, academia, also developers giving talk about different topics, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, open source multimedia navigation, LLM evaluation, medical imaging, LLMs based on communication data, etc. So for today's session, we have three very exciting speakers who will actually come from very different background that I'm very excited to hear your perspective on how progress in the field is moving. So the first speaker is Ji Ding, who is currently the head of partnership at LlamaIndex, which is an orchestration framework that really popularized concept of Retrieval-Augmented Generation over the past few months. He will give a talk about, I guess, like the introduction of GPT-4V coming from OpenAI and how it can combine with this new paradigm in order to push the field of multimodal forward. And I met G way back in the early days of this year when we stumbled to each other in different meetups, and he come across 12 labs before, and I'm super excited to hear his current journey with LlamaIndex and how things going on in the space. But the second speaker is Angela Hoover, who's currently the founder and CEO of Andi Search. She will give a talk about learnings from a user experience first approach to AI. I got a chance to meet Angela in person just like a couple of days ago during one of the in-person hackathon that we host in San Francisco, and she's been working on Andi Search for a few years now. It's a WhatsApp company that is taking a visual first approach to search engine. So it's definitely exciting to hear how the challenges, the story, and as well how it's been helping her in her company in the past few weeks, a few months. And then lastly, we have Russell, who is currently the DevRel manager at Inworld AI, who will give a talk about the future of immersive games focused on non-playable character AI character in this context. For those of you who doesn't know, Inworld is one of the startup that is really transforming the gaming industry and play a very crucial role at the intersection of AI and gaming. And I got a chance to connect Russell in, I think, last month during the Oracle Cloud World Conference, where we started sitting next to each other in the same booth. And so I thought their work is pretty exciting. And so that's why I invite him here for our webinars. So just a quick note on the event. Feel free to send your question on the Zoom chat so the speaker can answer them asynchronously. And then we'll have another short 5 to 10 minutes Q&A session towards the end once all the speakers finish. And so with that introduction out of the way, I'll let G, you can get started first with your presentation.
All right, thanks for inviting me, James. So just a little bit of a warning here. This is literally the first time anybody has seen these slides, so I have not timed it properly, maybe. So we'll see how far I get and how long it takes. But yeah, this is the world's first time anybody's seeing these slides. So you guys hopefully will enjoy. All right. So, oops, not that one, slideshow. Okay. Can you see my screen? See my slides? Yes? Okay, cool. So the topic is GPT-4V is here, now what? Right? So just a little intro to GPT-4V. Not everybody knows, I'm sure most people here know, but what is GPT-4V? It's basically this. It's an LM that understands images now, which is really cool. Now it's like starting to, understand things that are in the real world other than just text or speech. What it's not an image to text model. So I think this is something like, I said, here, describe this image in detail. That's just one of the functions of GPT-4V. It's not an actual image to text model. Those have been around for a long time. I remember Andrew Ng demoing some cool image to text models like 10 years ago, right? The other thing, it's not an image to a single embedding model. So these have also existed for a while. And these are, images that, images to vector embeddings. So GPT-4, and how do we know that it's not doing either of these? Like, it's not just, doing one of these things and then like putting the resulting text or putting the resulting embedding in there and then just saying, okay, that's a day. We know that because basically you can ask more questions, right? So like, for example, here I'm asking, what's under the AI in the image, right? This is not something that's described in this text here, right? So it says in the image under AI, there's the word magazine. Actually, that's a little bit wrong. I wasn't looking for a magazine. I mean, it's technically correct, but I wasn't looking for that. So I tried to like prompt it a little bit more. I said, hey, take a closer look. And it says, oh, actually, there's a dolphin's dorsal fin and a portion of its body under that AI, right? And that's actually completely wrong. That's completely wrong. And so this is one of the things about GPT-4V that you have to understand. It does do hallucination, just like all the other LLMs out there. But if I prompted it a little bit more, I said, okay, what's under there? This is magazine. There's something else. And it says, oh, there's actually a symbol under that image. So it's actually pulling out things from the image on every response. It's not, once again, not doing just a straight image to text translation. Okay, so now what happens if you have more than one image, right? So this is kind of cool. You're playing around with just like ChatGPT. You have, given an image, maybe give it, you can give it a graph or something, have it interpret for you. But I have more than one image. What do you do? Well, what are we in the business of? Retrieval-Augmented Generation. That's right. Yeah. So Retrieval-Augmented Generation, for those who don't know, a lot of you probably already know, search for the text that's most relevant, give that text to the LLM, get more useful output out of the LLM. That's really all it is. 3 steps, very, very easy. Search, give, get. Okay. Now, so since we're talking about images, we have visual retrieval-augmented generation. So you search for the image that's the most relevant, give that text to the multimodal LLM, and get more useful output. Okay, simple enough. How do you do visual RAG? So there's really 2 ways to do it. One is you convert the image to text. So you actually go back to, like I said, image to text, right? You convert the image to text, and then you retrieve the descriptions using vector similarity search, just like we do for text, right? So you treat the image as sort of a source of another type of text, but if that particular thing becomes the top retrieved thing, and then you bring it back to, you bring the image back and you give it to the multimodal LLM. Okay, so we have a notebook here. Hao-Tian did a great job here. You can take a look. It's already published. So this is method number 1, image captioning. Method number 2 is you search for images using image embedding models. Once again, these models have been around for a while. They predate GPT-4V by quite some time. And then you basically say, okay, here's some text. It finds the most relevant image for you. You use that image now to give to GPT-4V or Lava, or actually we're using Lava because GPT-4V doesn't even have the API out yet. But there are existing models already they can use, like OpenAI Clip and Google Vertex. These are image embedding models. Okay. We also have, once again, it's already released. Actually, today, we put this out today. It's released. You can try retrieval using image embeddings. Okay. But question is that it? Remember what I said, GPT-4V is not an image to text model, and it's not an image to single embedding model, right? So it kind of feels like we're shortchanging this new technology a little bit by, first filtering it out with one of these 2 techniques. So I'm here to tell you, this is the world premiere of a new technique for using multimodal models, and I'm going to call it Generation-Augmented Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or GARAG. Okay, so what is GARAG? So the problem is this. Okay, so let's say your query is, what is the unique facial feature of the animal known as the king of the jungle? Okay, if you put this into your text, either in the method 1 or method 2, you're not going to get good results out of it. Method 1, the main issue is going to be that, there's going to be your description is going to be very long, and it's going to have a lot of irrelevant information in there. And so it's going to be hard for the embedding model to find exactly what you're looking for. Method number 2, the problem is that the image embedding models tend to be much more literal when it comes to text, right? They tend to have much fewer actual textual similarity and much more literal. So it's not going to work. What we really want is this, right? We want this to be the thing that we retrieve. So how do we do it? Oops. What's the slide didn't load? Where are we? Which slide are we? Okay, hold on. So here's the solution here. Show anyways. Oh, come on. Okay, here's the solution here. Basically, you go to GPT and you say, given the following query, return the name of the animal that's in the query, right? So GPT then figures out that the animal you're looking for, because it's the king of the jungle, is a lion. Then you take the lion and you retrieve the image. And finally, you take what you retrieved and then you generate with GPT again. Oh, come on. Okay, the last part of the last G, which is the lion, use the image to answer the query. And then it says, oh, based on this image, I see that the lion has a mane. Okay. Let's try this once more. Okay, cool. All right, but wait, there's more, right? So once again, world premiere, you guys are the very first people to see this. It's in some use cases, it may not be enough to use GARAG, generation-augmented, retrieval-augmented generation. You need retrieval-augmented generation, augmented retrieval-augmented generation. Okay, so what I like to call RAGARAG. Okay, why do you need RAGARAG? Okay, you have a question now like that looks like this. What's the color of the warbler that was declared extinct in 2023? Unfortunately, GPT doesn't know about this because it hasn't been trained on this data yet. So if you ask, we use that same prompt that we had before. What is GPT going to say? Oh, it's just going to say warbler, right? It actually doesn't know what the name of that warbler is. You have to give it the necessary context. So we do. We say, okay, here's the context, right? I just pulled this off of some news article. The Bachman's warbler, first identified in South Carolina nearly 200 years ago, is likely extinct. Federal officials announced on Monday. Okay, and then it says, what is the color of the warbler that was declared extinct in 2023? And it returns Bachman's warbler. Then you take that, you find the image, right? So now you can find the image of the Bachman's warbler. And then you can say, using this image of the Bachman's warbler and the following context, answer the query. The Bachman's warbler, first identified in South Carolina nearly 200 years ago, is likely extinct. What's the color of the warbler that was extinct? And then it says, okay, now I know that this image is an image of the Bachman's warbler and it's the bird that was declared extinct. And now I can analyze that image for you. So once again, you may need to use RAGARAG. Okay, I think I went through this pretty quickly. I don't think I went over time. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for coming to the first ever LlamaIndex multimodal talk.
Fantastic. Great. It's awesome stuff, and also I also said the GitHub page that you should share on the slide to the chat as well. So for folks who want to follow up and check out that example. Yeah, super excited to like see that LlamaIndex that's supporting multimodal model as the world is moving towards that, and definitely hope to collaborate with your team more and more in the future. Yeah, any question from the audience about this novel concept that you just brought up? I'd be curious to get that from the audience. Russell raised hand.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Yi. That was great. Do you foresee this adding latency between an input and output? Because you're essentially doing a lot of prompt processing on this to get to a better output. But
absolutely, but there's no real choice, right? It absolutely adds latency because every time you go to LM, you get a round trip. But unless you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to stick within the knowledge context of the LM, which is totally fine for certain applications, you probably need that first step of RAGARAG, where you're actually doing the retrieval off of some other knowledge that you have, and then doing that generation is going to be important until one day we may get an image embedding model that can really handle a lot of these it's truly multimodal image embedding model. We're not there yet. Maybe OpenAI will announce something that they have GPT-4V, but right now the image embedding models tend to be much more literal. So
yeah, I think along those lines, like there's a question in the chat asking for real application of these two concepts, GARAG and RAGARAG. So although I know that this is sort of an abstract concept, would you mind like painting a vivid picture of how a real world engineering workflow using this concept can look like?
yeah, so yeah, we haven't actually built these last two into sort of production ready workflows. I would probably build it one with OpenAI functions that will give you better control over the JSON that's coming back. And two, in terms of your functions, you probably the issue, like I tried like saying like identify the most important visual element in the thing, and it didn't work as well. So the issue becomes like, for your specific use case, what are you really looking to search over? I'm not sure that, once again, without a true multimodal embedding model, I'm not sure there's a one sort of one-shot solution that says, okay, I can search over every single image on the internet. I don't think that's there yet.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, even for so just to follow up, I think somebody did ask this question, like, what are the real world applications where it's useful? I mean, even just for like very simple applications, if you're trying to do something that's like, if you're trying to do something that the user can put in a wide range of input, you're going to have this problem, because humans don't talk directly, right? It's not just like, hey, get me an image of this and then do analysis. People tend to talk in sort of roundabout ways, and that's one of the magic things about LLMs in general. But for multimodal, it's something still that we have to figure out, because multimodal search is still very, very much literal.
Awesome. Great. If you have any further question for Hoji, please put it on the chat and follow up. You could also put on your contact info in chat as well, so folks can follow up if they have further question. On that note, I'll let Angela can start sharing your screen and give a talk on her experience building Andi.
Cool. Loved that last presentation. That was awesome. Okay. I will just open this up. Cool. So actually, I'll just keep it like this. This is good. Sorry, bear with me just a tick here. Awesome. So today, what I wanted to talk with you guys about and just basically share is what we've learned so far from sort of working on multimodal search before it was what we know it as today. Andi is building search for the next generation using generative AI, and we've kind of been doing chatbot search for a while now. So we launched Andi's chatbot in December of 2021, and then we launched generative question answering in March 2022. So it's been a little bit working on Andi now, and I think search is a really fun space to be working in. So just wanted to share what we've learned and yeah, get your guys' feedback. So this is our team. This is me and my co-founder, Jed. He's the CTO, I'm the CEO. In a previous life, Jed has 20 years experience building search, and he's also experienced in working in the media. So he was a journo in a past life. And he studied computer science, but he is a dropout. I'm a dropout as well. Before working on Andi, I worked with Microsoft on Azure, and then, founded a travel influencer startup, or was trying to get a travel influencer startup off the ground. And also through working on Andi, for a while, we were doing a lot of research in the affiliate marketplace. So I learned about that as well. This is sort of Andy's journey. We did YC Startup School. I don't know if anybody here has looked into their videos or the videos that YC puts out, but I found those really helpful for me and just learning how to build a startup and work on a startup. And then we got into YC in July of 2021. We launched Generative Answers, like I was saying, in March of 2022. So we were pretty early on with that, but it's still super early days. This February, we launched the ability to summarize each individual search result. And then most recently, we just did a big UX update, and that was launched at the end of July. So that was like the biggest thing that we've sort of put out in terms of like really moving into that user experience approach to AI. Because I think that we're at this like really special time right now where everybody's moving so fast on the technology. And I think that everybody is like learning together. And now what I'm personally really excited about right now is just the UX and the way that we interact with this technology. And I think 12 Labs is doing a lot of cool stuff in that space as well. And then the final big piece of what Andy has done is move to SF, which like James was saying, that's how we met in person, and just getting out in person and seeing folks IRL has been really cool. And I think that we've learned a lot from being here. So we're excited to get into the AI community in SF. Okay, next I wanted to show you guys a quick demo, and then after the demo, I'll talk about the challenges of what we've personally experienced from building multimodal search. So this is Andy. When you go in, we have a chat interface, like I was saying, and then we have a visual results panel on the furthest right-hand side here. And you can kind of see, like James was saying, we're very focused on trying to make search visual and engaging in that sense. So just scrolling down, that gives you a little idea of the different sorts of ways that you can use the product. Then I can ask Andy a question about the Beatles. Cool. So when I do a search like this, as you can see, Andy comes back and gives a direct answer. You know, the Beatles were an English rock band formed in Liverpool. And then the results are just loading here, but once they load, all right, so you can see that the first result that shows is a Wikipedia answer, and it sort of gives you more information on this visual result card here. And then if I scroll down, you can just see, again, that they're sort of visual results, and they have a couple things on each result. So they have a visit button that will take you directly to the website. Read gives you a stripped out ad-free view of the content, which can be useful. And then the summarize feature, like I was chatting to you guys about before, is just a way to get a quick summary of the content. Then I thought it would be fun to do a search where the multimodal aspect comes into play. So I can ask Andy, play Hey Jude music video. Cool. So now you'll notice that instead of just search results, the first result is a link to a YouTube video. And hopefully once this loads here, okay, so you can see on these, some of them won't load, but basically what it's doing is it links me directly to a music video. So that's sort of where the direction we're headed, where we're trying to become multimodal. But we still have challenges that we're faced with on that front. And then the last thing that Andy can do, which is a little different, is write a paragraph about Beatles playlist. So in this search, I can actually click on this generate text button, which will pull from the search results and combine it with a large language model to generate an answer to the question that I asked. So you can see here, it reads through the search results, and then Andy's thinking, taking in all the information. and then it'll write a paragraph about the Beatles' latest hits. Cool. All right, so that was a bit of a demo of the product. The technical challenges that we've had building Andi has been, the biggest one for sure has been factual accuracy. I think this is something that a lot of folks are working on right now, just because speed, we've realized in search, is the #1 priority. People are used to getting results sort of instantaneously. So trying to pull in results in real time and combine it with a language model while keeping the speed fast has been a big challenge. The second one that I'm seeing in the market, and it's also been interesting for us to explore, is, and this also sort of got talked about in the last presentation, but basically the language model is only as smart as the person who's prompting it. And so, and that comes into play when we're thinking about AI search, because keyword-based search, people on Google are very used to just doing keyword-based search. But the longer the query, the more like semantic understanding and context it can pull in. And so the better the search result that you'll get. So it's kind of like, you know, figuring out how you prompt, or how you can get the user to prompt Andi in a more natural language way and a longer form way to get higher quality results, even though people are still doing keyword-based search. And it's something that we're thinking about a lot, and we haven't, you know, we don't have the answers to, but that's just one of the technical challenges. And then the last, I think, from the user experience perspective, is that the space is evolving really fast, and there's a lot of new stuff coming out every day. So even in terms of thinking about multimodal, how you can display results in a multimodal sense, you know, what is the personalization aspect of that, and what is the actual end user experience that somebody wants? Because depending on the user, it could be different for each person, right? So thinking about search in a personal way is just one of those next challenges that we're facing. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so exciting to work on too. But yeah, that's all I have on the presentation front. So I hope that was interesting. And yeah, thanks, James, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate your walkthrough demo. So Russell's raising his hand again. So you want to take a lead on the first question?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Angela. Thanks for the presentation. Very cool to see kind of the different ways that everybody in the space is utilizing multimodality. What was the impetus for taking on this challenge, right? Like you're stepping into the realm of like search giants, and there's a lot of heavy hitters here. And I just want to understand, you know, what was the kind of passion behind this and the reasoning?
Thanks, Russell. That's a great question. I mean, we started building Andi because we were frustrated with the amount of ads and spam on Google. So, and, you know, personally, I think that there's a big opportunity for making search more visual and like immersive. So that's the thing that I'm also excited about. But the initial problem was just, hey, there's a lot of ads and sort of low quality results on Google. We think that there's a better way to do it.
Great. I mean, I think this makes a lot of sense with the way that we're moving towards this spatial computing vision. I mean, I come from a background in XR, like I was a developer before spatial was cool. So I think if you are really holistically understanding how, you know, as humans, we experience things visually, that, you know, visual search is going to be a big deal moving forward when everything is going to be an AR or VR experience in front of you. So that's a really cool thing to think about too.
Cool. Thank you so much. That is an interesting thing to think about.
Great. Any other question for Angela? What do you want to ask? So go back to the technical challenges that you mentioned. So what factual accuracy? The last one you used experiment. What was the second one again?
So factual accuracy, and then keyword based versus like semantic search.
Right.
And then just the whole entire space moving really fast.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. I think like for both of the key, hallucination problem as well as the semantic search, I think that's the like pretty much every single like search first or like AI first search product out there are trying to solve. So I think like even some of the things that you mentioned about like RAGARAG can help improve a lot with hallucination and improve level of semantic capabilities. So it's the things it's exciting to like see application layer and infrastructure layer can work together in order to improve the results that the application can expect to do. Yeah. And on that note, there's a question in the chat asking like, like given that problem, what is your solution?
Yeah, thanks, RG. For us, I think the biggest thing is trying to get the content, because we've found that getting access to high quality content is the way to solve the factual accuracy issue. So that's partially why we have the read view, because that gives us the full page of content. So that makes it easier to be able to find each area of each search result that actually answers the user's question, and then being able to chunk that up and try to use that to help with the answer. But it's still something that we're working on, because I think hallucination is a big problem for everyone right now, like James said. So we haven't solved it, but that's sort of our direction that we're headed with, trying to figure it out. Oh, thanks, Roxana. For me personally, I mean, I'm such a visual person. I think that the UX is going to continue to become more and more visual. And I think that the information is just going to be chunked up and broken down. So I like to think of that, like, full search results aren't going anywhere, but the content being summarized and displayed in like a organized and shortened way will like keep getting better and better. Basically, a progressive reveal of information is how I see like the UX design of the LLMs and search. I guess that's more specific for the area that I'm working on, which is just search, but okay. SK asked, in the current system, what are you leveraging to index the videos and get the responses to videos on search? This is something that we would love to work with 12 Labs on because they're definitely a lot farther along than us in that sense. Right now, we're just pulling from search results for videos, but that's something that we'd be interested to work with 12 Labs on. Joel asked, based on user feedback, what is a use case that you did not anticipate that has been cool, interesting? Oh, this is a good one. The most interesting thing so far I've noticed that we haven't really promoted is actually people use the text generation feature a lot for code. So that's something that we haven't promoted or hasn't been, that we weren't expecting. But the way that Andi will give you like coding examples is it'll basically break it into a tutorial. So it won't just give you the code, but it'll actually tell you how to solve the problem. And our users have been, I thought that was pretty like cool and interesting. What are the main things to keep in mind about UX for AI-based applications? Well, this is the final problem that we're working on, that I think the user expectation is always changing, but I think in general, personalization is going to become a bigger and bigger thing. So the way that I might want my search results or my answers displayed could be totally different from the way that Russell wants it or the way that James wants it. So I think that personalization will continue to become more and more a piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a bunch of great questions and great answers. So you have any furthermore question for Angela? Yeah, just put them on the chat and so you can answer them asynchronously. And yeah, Angela, you want to share your contact info as well, so folks can follow up and have a question offline. That'd be great. So Russell, it's your turn to talk about gaming.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Angela, that was a great presentation. Thank you for the kind words, James, before, and for inviting me to kind of share what's going on at Inworld AI. Let me just make sure I am going to pull the correct tab here. Let's see. So if you haven't heard of us already, Inworld AI is essentially the character platform of choice for kind of what it means to create a custom AI character for your intended use case right now is gaming, but we're available in the engines like Unity and Unreal. So the use cases there are really up to the imagination of the developer. But this is me. I do developer relations here at Inworld AI. That's just a QR code for my LinkedIn. Let's get started with a little bit of a sizzle reel since we have a little bit more time than I thought. You may not hear audio. Let me know if there's no audio.
Yeah, okay, there's no audio response.
Yeah, so as you can kind of see from the sizzle in terms of how we fit into this multimodal world, there's like models for the, animation that we want the characters to kind of start playing, the speech to text and the text to speech, and of course the brain itself as to what the character should, communicate and reply to you when you speak. So we're really much approaching this as not just a chatbot kind of concept, but we really want to provide developers who are working in these realms the flexibility that they have these systems that are also modular, right? So if you're working with a big partnership studio like CD Projekt Red, for example, they have a really great history of voice and face animations and everything like that. So they probably won't want to use some of the aspects that we're working on, and that's fine. They can just slot us in for the character brain, and then once we feed them the relevant emotion or the relevant kind of animation that should be played on that end of the spectrum, their teams take over and just do all of that stuff, right? So the key for us is really being modular, not saying to the end user like, hey, you have to use every single piece of the platform. So why would a developing studio or an experience want to utilize AI NPCs? We're really seeing this paradigm shift, right? And what's possible with a narrative experience when you're incorporating dynamic conversations and dynamic outputs into your games. So you're getting a deeper engagement with the characters that you care about. You're able to utilize your own voice to interact with them, your own language, right? I think what's key is that localization is still an ongoing effort for a lot of projects and games around the world. And there are so many languages. And if you're, I hear stories about people from their childhood who have no idea the game that they're playing, right? Like Chrono Trigger, they're completely playing in Japanese, or they're completely playing it in English, and they're not native speakers, but because the game is so beautiful, or they kind of like trial and error it, they figure it out and they still form that emotional connection to the games. But so imagine if you're in a different country, a different language than what's normally localized to, but you're still able to engage and play with these experiences. And I think that's really exciting from the perspective of more accessibility. Replayability at scale, right? Like if you imagine if you're playing a detective game, something like what LA Noire has kind of really shown from Rockstar. What happens if instead of the suspect always being the suspect, essentially you've played LA Noire in its entirety when you've played it once, but now the crime committed changes, like the suspect that did do it changes, the way that it was done changes. And so these are all use cases that are enabled by AI NPCs, right? Like if you're able to feed them a different brain or a different character input or a different goal when the game starts, then all of a sudden your users are able to enjoy these experiences relatively indefinitely. And we're seeing that even in some of the productions that are released with our tech. Like on Steam, there's a game called Vaudeville, and essentially you are a detective trying to solve a murder, and there's like circus performers and there's different people and different, like the police chief that you interact with. And every time you go through this, depending on how you approach them as the detective, right, their responses are entirely dynamic and change. Emotional engagement. I touched on this a little bit in the narrative experience at this point, but the whole idea that you're able to form a closer bond with the characters that you're interacting with because simply you are embodying yourself, right? Like rather than the creative designers or the narrative designers or the writers who are, you know, scripting the game for you, you're able to lend your own voice into the experience. And we found that that really has increased the appeal of what is possible and how users feel when they play these games. Dynamic world building, again, being able to on the fly kind of tweak and adjust how the characters are reacting and what they know allows you to build this world around the player, which I think is a really interesting idea, right? Like being able to, especially with long-term memory and coherence, like stringing along a narrative chain, kind of like how Dwarf Fortress does it, you know, which is to an extent procedural generation there. But I think it's really cool how they approach like building a history for each unique world. And so that's possible now with characters as well, like rather than just an overarching world history. Adaptability. So characters that are dynamic, are robust, are able to kind of lend that level of flexibility in the game, right? They're not just only having 3 or 4 options that they'll reply to. They can really surprise you with how they react to what you're saying to them. So here is where Inworld kind of steps in to fill in that gap for AI NPCs. It's a fully integrated platform. So you can check us out at studio.inworld.ai, and that's essentially the web platform where you create your characters at this point. The process is super, super seamless. Angela talked about how visual learning is such an important piece for her. And, you know, we actually developed this platform so that users who are not technical or from a non-coding background can just step in and create their own, you know, custom AI character for their use case or just to interact with and just to learn about the space. And of course, we also have advanced SDKs, right? So I mentioned before, we're deployed in Unity, we're deployed on Unreal. We have a native development kit that's C++. We're working on like a Godot integration. And so that's where if you're more a technical developer, you're getting deeper into the code, kind of looking at how we're able to provide some of the multimodality here and what gets returned from our models, essentially. We have configurable safety. So if you're a developer, you definitely want to make sure that what you're working on is within the realm of the world that you're building, right? And so having these safety levels for like topics like drugs or like alcohol and things like that are really important to these developers. So we've built these safety configurations around our characters. Customizable knowledge. So of course you can feed in relevant lore and knowledge about your world into these characters, and that, you know, allows the characters to have an understanding of where they exist in the world and who they are. Memory. So I touched on this briefly before, but, you know, being able to have the characters recall information from previous sessions and have that data stored is really exciting. And so if you can think about, you know, completing a quest and mentioning that it was really difficult, and then you log off for the day, the next time you come and play, you know, as part of the conversation of getting back into the game, the NPC recommends that you have like maybe try a different loadout or try a different area to level up in first. And that's all just tied to the fact that they could remember that little piece of information that you contextually gave them, which is that you had a difficult time with that quest. Or maybe they even change the flow and they give you, you know, a different task to do based on how you reacted to the previous engagement, which is really interesting. Narrative control. So of course, you still want to have this overarching theme and story to the game. And so being able to implement goals and actions, right? So if the character or user asks you about who committed the crime, you should have the ability to have these fixed outputs if you want, right? So that you can keep a narrative arc going. And multimodality, of course, as we're on Multimodal Friday, you know, for us, it's very important to provide developers access to like what's possible with their speech text models, like the different languages that we do, like how we're handling what animation should go with the associated emotion, right? And things like that, but still giving access to developers on their end if they want to tweak stuff. So for example, a string that would come back in Unity would be like the emotion that's associated with this output, any change in the trust, dislike, attraction, like these are qualities of a relationship factor, and they're essentially float values, right? But you can tie them into what you want to do on the developer end, and then the animation that should accompany this output, and then the output itself, of course. So here's how kind of we structure and think about the pillars here at Inworld. So if you're playing a game, you're not going to want to wait like 5-10 seconds between each interaction while things are happening in the back end. And so we're, as real time as it gets, and latency is a huge consideration. And as you do more of these talks, I'm sure everybody will hear this more and more, but latency is kind of one of the, alongside hallucinations, the holy grail for AI companies. And so that's one thing that we're really optimizing and learning and researching about as well. The founding team at Inworld comes from the team at Dialogflow that was acquired by Google and DeepMind to build out the Google Assistant. And that's where a lot of the NLP machine learning expertise comes from. And again, when you ask Google Assistant something, you shouldn't have to wait like a long time to get an answer, right? Personality-wise, we have this character engine that essentially allows you to define how emotive and how what kind of personality traits you want your characters to have. And I think that's a really cool part of essentially taking NPCs out of the conversation of just being like set dressing and making them really much more involved in the world, like making them true intelligences that participate in the game with you, right? Contextual mesh. So making sure that these characters know, right, like within the realms of the lore, what world they're in, and making sure that there's safety guardrails. And hallucinations, of course, fall into this, right? Like making sure that characters don't try to explain to you what a stock market is if they're supposed to be from feudal Japan and things like that. We're a very much developer-focused company. Like we're building our product and our tooling based on direct feedback from devs, making sure that we're keeping in mind the use cases that these studios are building for. And yeah, we're working with a couple of partners. You'll hear some really exciting announcements in the coming months, but excited to share with you what's going on here. We've been working on mods. If you are looking at your own kind of how to get attention in the space and how to build more of a following, our Skyrim mod was really, really popular. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views over a very short period of time, and then sustained interest in generation. And who doesn't want to play a Skyrim where the characters respond to your own voice, right? Like we basically took the village of Whiterun and transformed it with our AI characters and allowed players to go in and like interact and talk. Like you can go ask the guard how he got the arrow in the knee and really deep dive into some of these character backgrounds. We did a Stardew Valley mod, so you're able to walk around and talk. And I think we used typing for just that one. And you're able to interact with these characters, given their background and lore. And I'm a big Stardew Valley fan, so that was really fun for me. We also did a tech demo on Steam, which is essentially showcasing what's possible when you design from the beginning with an AI character and narrative background. So really cool. It's free. It's called Inworld Origins, and there's a QR code at the end I can share. So definitely take a look if you're interested. It looks really good too. We've worked with a couple of companies. Niantic released this owl called Wall, which is a web AR experience, which again, coming from a XR background myself, was really interesting to think about. It is still live. You can go to meetwall.com on your phone or your Oculus Rift. And essentially you're able to pull this character through a portal and talk to them. So the showcase for Niantic and for Eighth Wall was their web AR, being able to deploy an AR experience from anything, including a browser and a smartphone. But for us, we're powering the brains of that experience, right? So we're allowing the brand to infuse some personality into the experience. And so something I want to highlight is that it's an owl that's meant to teach children about the redwood forest. And so, brands are trusting us with that kind of engagement and interaction to ensure that we're protecting our users as well. So that's the kind of validation that we've been receiving, which has been really great. Being able to, again, be in Unity, be in Unreal, we're there where the developers are. I think we have we have Roblox and Minecraft tool set as well, which means that there are kids like right now talking to characters in the games that they're playing that are fully AI, and to them it's just normal. Like for the rest of us, it's like there was that wow moment, but for them, this is just their Tuesday, right? Like they're just having fun with these characters, and I'm really excited to see what happens when you have not just digital natives, but like AI natives entering. Like I don't like prompt engineering is cool for us, but like in like 10 years, all of these kids will have PhDs because they've been doing it since they were 4. And so prompt engineering is no longer going to be a thing you have to teach people, but it's going to be a thing that you just have to get, you know, as the tech gets better, more developed, which I think is really interesting to think about too. But I digress. So see, these are some of the use cases beyond gaming, right? Like, as I mentioned before, because we're integrated with the engines and web SDK, we can enable some really interesting and amazing use cases. Like one of the things I've seen recently is a studio is using our platform to build these, like, you know, the hollow boxes. They're like big people-sized 3D holograms of animations or characters. And so they're using Unreal MetaHuman, which is supported in our Unreal SDK, powered by us. And it was the Forbes Health Summit ambassador. So like, you know, really popular people could come up and talk to it and ask it questions about the conference and things like that. So again, not even in the gaming sphere, but very relevant and very interesting use cases there. Ambassadors for college. So if you're, you know, a school that wants to welcome new students and you're trying to be this like very tech focused school, what better way to have a kiosk that you can walk up to and ask, like, where's this building, or like, who are the professors for this, or like, how long has this college been around? And so again, just part of the way that we're integrated with the engines allows for this use case. There's also a company that is using our platform to create training programs for nurse practitioners. So, you know, with the healthcare constraints and what's been going on with resourcing, it makes a lot of sense to try and find better ways to accomplish what was done before. And so being able to power these personalities with our character engines means that instead of having to find like 20 people to pretend to be sick, you're able to replicate these conditions of what it would be like to engage with, you know, a patient as a nurse practitioner, and give you that kind of hands-on training. And again, because we're multimodal, it's not just like typing your answers into a text box. You're really able to, you know, we've integrated with 11 labs for their voices and their voice cloning. So you're able to really get that experience of like, oh, I'm talking to, you know, essentially a paid actor, like literally a paid actor, to replicate what's going on with what you're trying to teach. AI avatars for entertainment. So I have a clip on the next slide where it is essentially a VTuber using our tech to power their stream, which is really cool and really interesting, right? So beyond just like branding and personas, is really enabling what's possible for the future of entertainment here. And virtual production. So that's a big deal. And what's a better companion to a virtual stage than a virtual character, right? Like being able to tweak their personality, being able to tweak how they react to things on the fly, being able to put them in the camera scene because they're in Unreal has been a big appeal for our users. So here is that ambassador that I mentioned before. So that's like a hologram box. This is called Miko, who is a streamer that is using our platform to essentially create these characters that she interacts with on stream. She tried to replicate herself. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of like use cases beyond just gaming, and it's been really exciting to see that. These are just some testimonials. More importantly is on the right side, how we're kind of holistically thinking about the platform, right? Like there's an integrations level, there's a contextual mesh for the characters, the character engine, that's the brains, and then everything runs on latency optimization and pre and post prompt processing. This is the, you know, page that I mentioned on Steam. Something to note is that we are on Steam, so that kind of gives you a little bit of validity to how we're able to approach this conversation, right? Because I know generative AI has been a big roadblock for a lot of games on Steam. The nice thing about what we do is that it's not asset generation. Like we're not creating these models, we're not fine-tuning art. We're just powering the brains, and the brains are usually trained on the data that is for your game. So it's very easy to point to the sources of the data, because the character can't tell you about your lore if you haven't given it that access. And here's just my contact information, and I was able to fit that perfectly in time. So thank you everybody for that presentation, and happy to hear your questions.
Lovely. Well, thanks, Russell, for the excellent presentation. Like packed content, and super excited to I guess see like the ownership. Yeah, like the versatility, right, of the technology that you build, because it go beyond I think the sort of the traditional modality that we interact with, like language or image, but like almost like a 3D / virtual environment where people can create new experience from scratch. So I think that is something that definitely excites me a lot, and I'm sure like a lot of folks can feel that as well.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about what we work on is that it's kind of like a common sense integration of AI. A lot of companies are kind of jumping on the bandwagon because they feel like stakeholders and investors have to see generative AI in their roadmaps. They're kind of shoehorning it into the use cases that aren't really necessary for everything. But who doesn't want to play a more engaging narrative game, right? So for me, that's one of the appeals. It's like, it makes sense. Like if I approach somebody who's not really aware of generative AI, but they're a really passionate gamer, if I told them, hey, what if we could allow you to talk to the characters? I think that has a really lasting appeal.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I saw.
I know we're running over, but can I ask a question?
Yeah. Let's feel free to yeah. I can keep it like.
So really interesting use case. You have the NPCs, right? Obviously, I think that's really cool. One thing just occurs to me, we talk about some like there's like hallucination problems. Like, how do you keep your NPCs like on track? Because like, especially with gamers, they're a mischievous bunch, I think so.
Yes, this is a great question. So again, it's not a solved problem for us. Just like every other company, we're spending a lot of time with R&D into isolating some of the use cases and protecting our characters from the users and vice versa. But I think we've done a pretty good job. It's a lot of post-prompt processing. It's a lot of double checking to make sure that before the characters even get it, that it fits in the narrative of the game. So you might notice what will happen sometimes is our character will start an answer and then kind of pause for a little bit, which is kind of a human thing, right? Like sometimes you'll be like, oh, and then you can kind of hear that gears ticking. And for us, that's where we're doing a lot of the hallucinations checking. It does happen sometimes, right? Like we're not perfect, but if you look at kind of the trust that partners have placed in us, I think it speaks to the robustness of the solution, right? It's definitely something that we're still, just like everybody else, searching for.
Yeah, awesome. If I recall correctly, didn't you like work on like an hour or something, like a teaching like language pronunciation, right, before you join LlamaIndex? It sounds like something that is similar to like these characters that Inworld's been building. Oh, okay. So let's see, there's a question on the chat by Nishan, if you want to answer that, Russell.
Yeah, so we're not really like a machine vision kind of model company. A lot of the way that we achieve our latency success is actually breaking down the big kind of input as little models that can address it, which is kind of interesting. A little bit of what Yi was talking about, but essentially there is a model that's solely dedicated to reacting emotionally to what the player is saying. So not just like understanding anything beyond, does this make the character upset, anxious, angry, or sad? And so then that gets fed into the output later. There is a model that's solely, for what animation should be accompanying that text, right? And then of course there's the bigger model that is the actual context of the dialogue, but we're not shoving everything into one prompt and then feeding it into a model. Like we're breaking it down to the relevant pieces that make sense, And then that has helped a lot with optimizing for latency, right? Like you really don't need such a large model if you're only ever looking for very specific pieces to solve. And then of course,
Yeah, that's understandable. Like, because for doing all of this, you need a chain of models, right? Like one won't be feasible for everything, right? So, but different type of model also, right? You need some um, text generative models, and then the vision generative models as well to generate some this animated.
And then our speech recognition models, right? Our speech input and output too. So there's actually a lot going on beneath the hood. So yeah.
So yeah, that's why I was interesting to know to see this. What kind of vision models are used to generate animations, like stable diffusion type of things, or
Oh, I see. So great question. So at this moment, what we're doing is we're utilizing created animations. Like these are not machine generated animations. They're like, essentially you can think of them as the default animations that come with your demos, for example. And the reason we do that is because we acknowledge that like we aren't going to be able to replace whatever studios have had in place as a pipeline, or we're leaving that decision up to the studios, right? So if you're like a AAA game dev studio that has been building games for like 20 years, you have a robust stable of animators and you have the animations already. And so what we've done is we've just said, okay, here are the like placeholder ones that our model says should be played. You can come in and replace them with whatever animations you have on your end, right? So we're not actually like generating the animations for the users. We're feeding in some default animations, but it's not like we don't generate the animations for the character to use during runtime.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for the question. If you have any other questions, I know we're over time. Feel free to reach out and connect on LinkedIn, and you can always shoot me an email here too. I'll type it into the chat before everybody goes. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Oh, perfect, Russell. I think it's a great way to conclude our webinar. And well, I want to thank the speaker for taking the time to preparing the materials and present it to our community. And really appreciate your diverse perspective in a variety of topics, right? From like open source RAG to multimodal search to AI and gaming, anything. There's a lot of inspiration that can I personally can take for my work to pushing like the boundary of multimodal AI further. Yeah, so the recording of this webinar will probably be available in 2.5 to 3 weeks, and I emailed that to everyone about 10. Also, we run this series on a weekly basis. So yeah, good luck to see you in the future for some of the upcoming session. Yeah, with that, thanks for your participation, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Cheers.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, James.